Okay, I know I promised you Irving Azoff, and let me just say, a Pepsi is a Pepsi. And he is at least part of the mastermind of Britney's Vegas residency. To understand Irving Azoff, wow, I don't even understand all his back history, but I will put some resources in the link of books. You can just search them for his name and know that he had ties both to the Mafia and to MCA Records, which is Lou Wasserman ran MCA for a long time. And that's where Ronald Reagan came in, and they got in trouble because they got a waiver from Ronald Reagan because they were a talent agency and then also did programming, which is a conflict of interest because you're supposed to have your representatives work for you and not for the companies, okay? So, Irving Azoff started as a promoter. I think he's from Indiana, the Midwest, Chicago, all of that wonderful area. Before Live Nation, the cartel started, Irving was a part of the network, a group of independent promoters. Okay, Irving Azoff. So he started up as a promoter and he came to Hollywood and very much congratulates himself on starting the Southern California sound or whatever. So one of his big first acts was Linda Ronstadt, and her backing band was the Eagles. Now, Linda Ronstadt dated Governor Jerry Brown for a long time. And Jerry Brown was governor of California both in the 70s, early 80s, and from 2011 to 2019. And he was Attorney General of California from 2007 to 2011. Okay, I'll tell you the Minion story, which is hilarious, right? Because MCA Records have all these little sub-companies, right? And so one of them was like a front for the mob, and there was an IRS investigation, etc. Well, in the new Minions movie, Minions 3, spoiler alert, in order to meet the bad guys, Gru goes into criminal records, has to play a Linda Ronstadt record backwards to get to the secret layer. Hint, hint. Okay, so next video. Irving Azoff ran MCA Records in the 80s, and he was very powerful already at that point. Part of MCA Records was Roulette Records, and they're the ones who got charged with some scheme of selling off records that were supposed to be for very little amount of money for much more money, so there was like an IRS thing. They were thought to be a front for the Mafia, etc. I'm just talking, I'm not looking at notes or anything. In the early 80s, Don Henley of the Eagles was found with underage girls, and they are the ones who were charged with, got drug charges and prostitution charges. So Irving leaves MCA, the Eagles have broken up. Later, when the Eagles get back together, their greatest hits album was the biggest selling album of all time for many years. If it still isn't today, I'm not sure. So he ascended into power, right? He worked his way up, despite probably nefarious means in which he did that. Also, remember back in the day, getting your records played on radio stations was really important because there was no other way to hear them, and the mob would force stations to play records. I'm gonna skip a couple things just for expediency's sake. So Azoff leaves MCA. He starts Giant Records. He just started a new Giant Records, but this one was started in the 90s. And guess who releases an album there? Brian Wilson, who was also under a conservatorship. Brian Wilson had a strange relationship with a therapist where the therapist lived with him full-time for many years, and he was extradited from that exploitative relationship. But then within the family, there's also been people who have said in his family that he's being exploited still. And that's a hard thing for people with or perceived to have disabilities, is that, you know, if anything can fall under the level of treatment and being a productive member of society, and we might not know their wishes at all. So Irving Azoff does a whole PR campaign about how Brian Wilson is back, etc., etc. And the sticking point for me with Lou Taylor is, yeah, she masterminded the conservatorship, but where did she get the idea? And I'm not sure when she connected with Azoff, but I know they connected. Next video. Irving Azoff ends up being the CEO of Ticketmaster in 2008. His management company was called Frontline Management, and he had been a manager a long time, but that particular one I saw reported it started in 2005. Well, when he came on to Ticketmaster, Ticketmaster acquired Frontline Management, and Warner Music Group sold its share of Frontline Management to Ticketmaster for like $130 million cash. Okay, so he was a power player by 2008. As soon as he comes onto Ticketmaster, they're already trying to merge Ticketmaster and Live Nation. So Live Nation really is the cartel of the music industry today. Follow Brian Spears' career and you will see Clear Channel was the big boogeyman before Ticketmaster, and Live Nation spun off of Clear Channel. But you'll see that Brian Spears' career, he works for the Palms Casino, he works for Caesars, he works for Clear Channel. So very much his career is symmetrical to all these. Okay, I feel like I have to extend the conversation about Brian Spears, because think about this, right? If you think of the people around Britney more as bada bing, rather than, you know, a white trash Southern family, it makes a lot more sense. And no classism, thank you. Terrible people come from everywhere. And I love a lot of Southern people, and they're way less likely to be racist than Northerners. Okay, so Brian Spears, interestingly, recently got a job at Philo, like this whatever company. And 10 days or so before he got that job, Christy Hefner joined the board. Now, Christy Hefner is Hugh Hefner's daughter, and she's the one who really ran Playboy from the 80s onward for most of that time. Now, the Palms Casino had a Playboy club in it, and they hadn't had a club in a really long time. And there's the Mortons. I won't go into that. But just consider that Brian Spears is still being propped up by these people. And also, Caitlyn Jenner met one of her wives at the Playboy Mansion when she lived there. So you didn't think the Kardashians would come up. A lot of people actually don't know that the Kardashians are lifelong friends with the Azoffs, dating back to Robert Kardashian. Now, it seems Kris Jenner had a very humble, normal upbringing. Well, Robert Kardashian, the father, he grew up in luxury because I actually listened to a book about the Kardashians for this research. He came from a family that ran trash pickup and processing, whatever, Beverly Hills, a big section of the LA area. And they were in meatpacking. The thing about racketeering is you want to be able to fully control a region of a given industry so that you have a racket. And that's what RICO stands for. Racketeering and corrupt... I had to look it up. Racketeering and corrupt organization, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So perhaps they had a racket, and that's where their dad came from. Anyway, so you have to keep that in mind, because the fall of Britney coincides with the rise of the Kardashians. It's indisputable. But the extent of collusion, despite widespread knowledge that Lou Taylor has had a relationship with the Kardashians for a long time, the Kardashians have never felt the pressure to address it at all in the media. And that speaks to a certain level of being untouchable, doesn't it? So, who knows how Robert Kardashian and Irving Azoff came to know each other? You know, they're just friends, whatever. Interestingly, Kris Jenner and Caitlyn Jenner met at a party for Ronald Reagan, celebrating his wonderful life, and how we're all devastated by, we continue to be devastated by neoliberal capitalism. Okay, so the Kardashians. And it's interesting because Courtney Love sent out a text and posted it on Twitter, and it said it was her checking in with a friend about the legitimacy of Matthew Rosengart as a lawyer. And he's like, oh yeah, he knows how high up it goes. Redacted someone's name, and it said blank pushed Lou Taylor on everyone, the Jenners, everyone, you know? And I think that's Irving Azoff, who made the Kardashians Lou's client. Do you see how easy it is for this conversation to go off the rails? Because the directions are a spider web and it's not a grid. So the Azoffs and the Kardashians, clearly old school ties. And let's go back to the 2010 merger of Ticketmaster and Live Nation. Okay? Azoff comes on board, runs Ticketmaster. Immediately, they start trying to merge Live Nation and Ticketmaster. He runs it until December 2012. And as soon as he steps down, his son, Jeffrey Azoff, signs Britney via CAA. And Britney leaves William Morris Endeavor. And that's where she was with Jason Trawick, right? When Irving resigned, he could not sign new artists for 2 years, right? So wouldn't it be great if he could use his own son as a proxy for managing artists? He could take some of his long-standing clients with him when he left Live Nation, like the Eagles and Christina Aguilera. So when Britney Spears says, you know exactly what they did to me to Christina, how do you think she knew? Maybe Azoff being her manager for 20 years? Okay, so what goes around? So Irving Azoff no longer is officially part of the Live Nation, but I will tell you, he still has immense control over Live Nation. He has said he didn't like answering to a board. You have a board of trustees or whatever, directors, if you're a publicly traded company on the stock market. Now, Michael Rapino has led Live Nation since Irving left in December 2012. And Lou Taylor has said that Michael Rapino and Irving Azoff are her mentors. I feel like I've told this story a million times. So, after the bona fide success of Britney's Piece of Me residency, right? That is exactly when you'll see Lou Taylor start to make these lists. Best Business Manager, Hollywood Reporter, Billboard, Variety, all the big trade publications in the music industry, or entertainment industry more broadly. Well, they're all owned, at least now, by Penske Media, who are in with Donald Trump, and the owner's dad got a Presidential Medal of Freedom from Trump. So what I'm saying is the industry is highly tied to conservative politics. South by Southwest. As I was saying, conservative people run much of the entertainment industry. So, South by Southwest, Bonnaroo, Coachella, all owned by conservative people. I'm telling you, the people that own stadiums and sports teams and all of that. And so, Jeff Azoff also staked his territory as a leader in the industry through the success of Piece of Me. And interestingly, he's always left out of the conversation. So much focus on Lou and the family. Oh, I disappeared. So just keep that in mind when I'm telling you how powerful he is, and he's absent. 1, you don't hear the Maloofs, and 2, you don't hear about the descendants of Billy Graham and the evangelicals so quickly. Why would the vice industry, sex, drugs, prostitution, strippers, drugs, whatever, be so tied in with conservative politics? Isn't it interesting how certain politicians just have a sex scandal and it comes out at opportune times? Well, blackmail is alive and well in the USA. The same way that Ronald Reagan didn't acknowledge AIDS for a long time, J. Edgar Hoover, who ran the FBI for decades, did not acknowledge organized crime. He went hard against Martin Luther King Jr., I mean, terribly hard, and other more left figures, and wow, a lot of them sure died young, but left the organized crime syndicates to run amok. Never fall for people who say they are conservative but socially liberal. Most powerful people are all socially liberal. It's just that they need those benchmarks to keep the regular people in line. That's why abortion just continues to be this thing that's unsettled. It's because it's probably the number one strongest single issue voter thing. They can be against everything else, but if you're anti-abortion, you're going to vote with the anti-abortion people. Is that an aside? I don't know. So just think about these circles people run in and how the media could be so silent about Britney for so long. It's because everyone knows, I think, already. It's just they're scared and they want a career, I guess. I bring up historical facts because it is relevant to the glaring issues that Britney is facing, right? The conflict of interest, her CAA and Caesars were both heavily controlled by TPG Capital. And then you have Larry working with Live Nation, who also does the promotion and ticketing for Piece of Me, right? And this is where Larry comes in, because after the success of Piece of Me, Larry gets Maverick in 2014. In 2021, he gets a whole new management firm, 724 Management. So he has also been heavily protected by Live Nation. You can't understate that fact that no, he's not being gone after, and everyone's falling on Lou. And my feeling has been for a long time that Lou will actually have to turn informant because she knows a lot. All you have to do, look at my map, you'll see how often her clients coincide with Azoff's. And Prince Estate, Primary Wave, they were specifically created. As I was saying, Primary Wave runs the Prince Estate, and Azoff does and Lou Taylor does in different capacities. But Primary Wave was founded in 2006 to take on part of the Cobain estate. Now, my feeling is that Courtney Love did not want that to happen. And there's a lot of shadiness going along there and the same players. And this is predating Lou getting involved with Britney. So how was Lou involved with Courtney? And we really don't know right now. But I will say, yes, Lou Taylor started with Arthur Anderson. And there was, I think the Arizona Baptist Foundation was one of the biggest frauds in history. And that was with Arthur Anderson. So she's very tied into that evangelical money laundering bit. Yet in Hollywood, she couldn't have gotten the LAPD to go along with the Britney Con. So someone else behind the curtain helped that along, because you can't say the LAPD didn't know. And also I wanted to say about conflicts of interest, Brian Spears worked for Caesars when Britney had a residency and lived with her. The LAPD is one of the most corrupt police departments in the United States. Did you know, I think it is the Los Angeles jail is the biggest jail in the country. So when we think about how are they able to get that whole basically special ops going on to grab Britney from her house, that's quite the coordination and quite a lot of dedicated resources. So that could only come from the top. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I have theories about a conspiracy. And clearly, there is one. Now let's talk about Dina LaPolte a little bit. She's a lawyer that comes up every now and then. But I was looking into her. And interestingly, she taught some course. And it was even seasoned musical industry folks take the course. Irving Azoff has a quote and Larry Rudolph has a quote. They're not quoting because they took the course. They're quoting because they're friends. Okay? So just think about who is being set up to take the entire fall for this. This is what drives me mad. Lou Taylor didn't just show up from Nashville or Sacramento because Ron Artest was playing for the Sacramento Kings when she likely met Jamie Spears. She didn't just show up from Nashville and was able to know who the Geralds were, Geraldine Weil and all the people Courtney has named, and be able to get the LAPD on it and know which judge to pick. Jamie Spears didn't know that either, so someone else did. Someone knew how to make that happen. Anytime you hear famous artists be it's the business, this business is hard. Is it the business or is it the businessmen? And why don't they ever name them? You have to wonder why. Why would everyone who worked with Britney, many people encountered her at a show, award shows, red carpets, whatever. Why were they all silent? And that is a level of power well beyond the Spears family and Lou Taylor. So look at other things Irving Azoff has his hands in. I can do a whole series on Jeff Azoff and Harry Styles. And it's actually Harry Styles fans who made my research on him go viral to the point of it going off Tumblr and Lady Gaga liking that tweet, which was a big deal to me. But I kind of want to move on with my life, so share this.